we have another guest in our professional interview series for Parks and Rec professionals. Here in a second, I'll let the guest introduce himself. But always happy to talk to him. I've known our guest for a number of years now. Met him through the National Recreation and Park Association. Um, what I liked about him is they seem pretty genuine, and that's what I like about Parks and Rec in general. Is you get some real good folks out there. Uh, let's not skip around too much. Uh, you know, Tell us who you are, and where you're at and all that. I guess I'll call you Mr. Logan for right now, but Mr. Logan, tell us where you're at and what your title is and all that good stuff.
Sure. Name is Gerry Logan. My title right now is Field Sales Representative with Musco Lighting. But how we got to know each other through Parks and Rec. I spent 10 years of servitude in city government. Before this, moved over to Musco last year, right as the pandemic was starting. Lucky enough, because it's super smart to change jobs in a pandemic. But it worked out. It has worked out. I still have a huge passion for community parks and rec, and what's been really good about this job is it allows me to stay connected to that because I can, my main clientele is parks, agencies, and schools. So I was able to, and that was one of the reasons Musco hired me, is because of my network, very, very large network of folks I've gotten to know over the years through parks and schools. So it's been really cool, even though I'm in technically private sector. I'm still on the Mississippi Parks and Rec board, and talk to all my Parks and Rec friends regularly, including folks that I've gotten to know through National Rec and Park over the years. But anyway, as far as who I am, again, Gerry Logan. I did my background education. I got my bachelor's in Parks and Rec Management from the University of Mississippi way back in 2010. Worked a couple years, moved to College Station, Texas, to work as athletics supervisor initially, and then I moved over to special events. But while I was there in College Station, got my master's from Texas A&M, master's in recreation, park, and tourism, with a certificate of nonprofit management from the Bush School of Public Policy. I know it's a mouthful, but got my master's from A&M and wanted to focus, get the certificate was my way of kind of noting my focus on public policy, government, and nonprofit. So it was a good program, a good certificate to get. Overall 10 years in city government, but now in the private sector.
So, and I want to dive into each of those a little bit more here in a little bit. But tell us a little bit about where you're originally from and, what you did as a kiddo that got you involved in the parks recreation. And I know you said you wasn't directly involved, but I consider Musco Lighting one of those essential services. So I'm going to say it is directly related to Parks and Rec. I just think you're on the commercial side versus public. So,
Sure.
anyway, tell us a little about where you grew up and things you did as a kid and how that transformed into adulthood and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Born and raised a Mississippi boy, and maybe you can tell it through the accent. I'm trying to talk normal for you folks without as much slang. But I grew up in North Mississippi, Pontotoc County. Was always involved, pretty much starting, as a kid, played sports and through middle school and high school, and even played a little bit of community college soccer. Just always involved with sports and being outdoors is what I love to do. Really kind of what got me started down the path before I even really knew it was I was a recreational soccer referee in high school. And I mean, honestly, the reason I got into that was because it made money, and I was already familiar with soccer, and just started there at the local Pontotoc Parks and Rec department doing that, and then continued to referee youth soccer while I was in college at Itawamba Community College, and while I was there at community college, I was looking for a degree. Hadn't really found anything yet that I enjoyed, and it wasn't until I got to Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, that I found Parks and Rec management, and quickly realized that that's what I wanted to do. It was outside, it was sports related. It's what I'd been, more or less doing a good portion of my life, and it's what I enjoyed the most. Yeah, I changed my major to Parks and Rec Management. Did all the things there was to offer. The leadership. We had a student association for Parks and Rec Management. I was involved in that, president my senior year. Volunteered. We had to do practicum hours, volunteer hours, internships. Again, everything that the college wanted us to do for the program, I did it. Really loved it, and knew I wanted to be in Parks and Rec, as a career, and ultimately did. So, but yeah, just always involved with sports, and just being around folks in the community and being outside, and just doing events, being a part of events. I just love that stuff and still do to this day.
So you talked a little bit about my next question, but so I got it too. So what's your, now, the current Gary, what's your favorite sport to play, and what's your favorite sport to watch as far as a spectator?
I got two kids now, so my playing days are mostly over. I did played adult tennis up until about 2 years ago. Um, Played that for a while. It was a good way to get out of the house, get a little exercise. But honestly, uh, you know, generally adult rec leagues, adult tennis leagues and stuff tends to be built more around the social environment, which is one of the main things I enjoyed about it. But yeah, I kind of gave that up right before we had our second child, just because time was really, really getting tight. And Now I've got a 5-year-old, soon to be 6-year-old. He's been playing sports. I enjoy coaching him and being out there with him, and also, in a way, especially now, since I don't, I don't work as a Parks and Rec uh, employee. Doing that, coaching, I'm still able to connect with the kids, and see them learning the sport and having fun and developing that passion and enjoyment for playing in a team atmosphere. So that's been really good. That's kind of my main involvement with sports right now is through my 5-year-old. When I have time, I enjoy disc golf personally. I don't hardly ever get to play. I still enjoy tennis, even though I haven't played it in a while. Fantasy football, I guess it's technically leisure. I don't really like any other fantasy sports, but I do enjoy fantasy NFL football. When it's time to do that. Yeah, beyond that, I'm trying to think anything else I enjoy. That's mainly it.
So, beyond sports, what other kind of stuff do you do in your free time? You mentioned you have a family there, and I know, usually with family, your free time or your fun stuff is all kind of family fun time. What kind of fun stuff do you do now, man? Just for when you got time other than sports?
Yeah, not a lot. Anything kid related. I do now that I live in Oxford, and close to University of Mississippi. Trying to attend more Ole Miss sports and take my 5-year-old. Hope he develops a love for Ole Miss like I do. So yeah, going to that has been one of the few things in my free time I try to get out and do. But right now, because we just sort of recently moved back in October, but we're still kind of getting settled. I've got a lot of projects to do around the house. I've got a honey-do list a mile long. So yeah, any free time I get on weekends is dedicated to house-related stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that's the life of people in our age group with a family, right?
Yeah, it is. It's whatever I do what my wife tells me to, and when she's not telling me what to do, I'm doing something with kids.
So, so tell us a little bit about, you talked about your majors in college. Um, so I'm going to skip that for a second because that was kind of like my next line of thought. But What kind of jobs have you had throughout your life? You mentioned a couple, but starting from when you started your work. I don't know. Some folks worked at like Pizza Hut or something when they were a teenager, but what have you done throughout your life as far as jobs?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned being a soccer ref. That was kind of really the first, first parks related job. But then I moved on. I did that in community college as well, and did other just whatever I could to make money throughout college for the most part. Until I got to once I got to Ole Miss, first I guess one of the first full time jobs I had. Worked at Walmart in the service department. Super exciting. If you ever have a chance to get your oil changed at Walmart, don't do it. Just take my word for it. But yeah, did that. Had one really interesting summer, or was it one or two? I forget. My memory sucks. I think it was one really interesting summer doing surveying for life jackets. Just a project I got into because of Dr. Beeson, my professor at Ole Miss. So I got to do that, and that was really cool one summer. And then, after that, besides the Ole Miss thing, my first job was sports coordinator. That was in Clinton, Mississippi, 3 years there. In College Station, Texas, a year as athletic supervisor, 3 years as special events supervisor. Moved back to Mississippi to Starkville. I think my title was director of recreation and sports, which was basically an assistant director type level. Then the director was fired, and I was interim director for a couple months, and then executive director. Uh, and I did that up until the time I moved over to what I'm doing now, which is field sales representative for Musco.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about that. So, Musco is a lighting company at its core. Tell us a little bit about what Musco is, what they do, and then what you do, day in, day out kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was a definitely I viewed it as a big risk because again, I just assumed I'd stay in Parks and Rec all my life. But Musco, anybody you talk to generally speaks really highly about Musco, the company, and the family atmosphere. And I definitely felt that when I was considering the job. It was still a risk to take it, but I've absolutely felt that since I've joined. But yeah, I mean, lighting is at the core of everything. There's some different little side initiatives that Musco's involved with. Musco does a mini pitch project, which is basically an effort to revitalize old tennis court and basketball courts, and lighting is kind of a package with that. That's something they've worked a lot in partnership with NRPA on, because those tend to be really well received in underserved areas, and urban areas, because generally those places don't have just a ton of real estate, but they often do have old, underutilized basketball courts or tennis courts. So that's been a really cool initiative that Musco's involved with. Musco now does video streaming. As of last year, they unveiled that a couple weeks after I started. So yeah, Musco offers a product called Musco Vision Now, which is again video streaming. It's an opportunity to, if a sports complex adds this, it's an opportunity for parents, grandparents, family, coaches, scouts, whatever, to be able to stream these games from anywhere in the world. So that's been cool to see, and something Musco's really pushing for, to continue to see to grow. But yeah, I mean, Musco's just a really, really cool company. I can't speak highly enough about them. I was actually able to meet one of the founders, Joe Crookham, and spent kind of a day with him, and really, really, I mean, I was already an employee at that point, but it really solidified the reasons I took the job, and just, made me wholeheartedly buy into, what Musco does, the type of company it is, and, it's a solution-based company. So my job, and what I enjoy is we try to approach things, when I meet with folks, it's not really about sales. It's about, hey, you have this issue, and what can we do to kind of help that. So very solution based. customer oriented, end user slash owner oriented. And it's just, again, just been a really, really awesome company and awesome experience. I'm coming up on a year now that I've been with them.
Nice. And something that you said that kind of, because kind of like you, I've been around parks and recreation for a decent amount of time, right? I always hate to say how long. Sometimes that's a bragging point. Sometimes it's like, man, I can't believe I'm that old. Um, but throughout my time in my various parks and recreation positions, Musco has been around, and they've always done. The people is who Yeah, lighting is lighting, and they do a good job at that. But it's the people and the service they provide. I've never met anybody that works for them that I didn't like. And I think that speaks pretty highly of them too. And specifically, I interacted with a guy named Kurt Mickey out of
Yep,
Kentucky quite a
yep.
bit, and I just thought the world of him. I again, just like I was kind of bragging about you, a very genuine guy, a very upbeat, positive guy, and all that. So, and he likes to fish. So, anybody who likes to go fishing is already getting up there as far as my
Yeah,
in my book, right? So,
yeah. And
oh, go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
going to make a follow up comment. Yeah, real quick. I mean, that's one of the that I mentioned. Just being able to, even though I'm in the private sector now, being able to stay connected to parks folks. What I enjoy the most and have enjoyed the most is because of the position I'm in now. I obviously have a reason to meet with pretty much every park director in the state, and that's really not an opportunity I had before. I had a job to do. I was parks director in Starkville. I didn't have, I did work with Mississippi Rec and Park, but you know, I wasn't, I couldn't really have the time, didn't really have the time to plan meetings with folks across the state. I did district involvement, whatever, but now in the role I'm in, some of the best days I have is meeting a park director I've never met before. And we might talk about lighting in a few minutes, obviously, but I'm asking them questions about, we end up spending a lot of our time talking about, hey, how's your leagues going? How's the pandemic affected your department? What do you pay your referees? Always seems to be something. Hey, where are here's some grant info. I don't know how I stumbled into being that person, but in Starkville, I kind of sort of became the grants guy and was always looking at grants to try to supplement funding. So that knowledge and perspective, I take that to my meetings, and that's the info I want to give to these parks folks, and that's been one of the most beneficial and rewarding things is to be able to relate to these park directors and tell them about all these resources that are out there. Because honestly, I don't know how it is in Kentucky, but here in Mississippi, we have a lot of parks directors that don't really have parks background. I mean, they're small towns of 5,000 or less people, and the city is hiring whoever's there local to do the parks stuff. So they don't necessarily have that bachelor's in Parks and Rec, or they don't know about or very little about National Recreation and Parks. They certainly don't really know much about grants and leadership opportunities and conferences. So it's running on a little bit, but I mean that's been one of the best parts of this deal is I'm able to go into these meetings and talk about so much more than lighting stuff.
Yeah. So to kind of get us off on a little tangent here, I always like asking people this: if you didn't have a career that you have, as far as in Parks and Recreation and in your position there at Musco right now, if there was some other career path that you had to take, what would be the career you'd want to be in? What kind of job would you have?
Oh well, I'd probably and I'm not sucking up to you, I promise, but I'd probably look at university. Going and teaching and dealing with students and trying to get them connected to the parks field. That was kind of what I always thought I would eventually do once I was done with parks, public parks and rec. But yeah, I mean, if I've done the public parks and rec thing, I liked it, but I really like what I'm doing now. But if Musco wasn't on the table anymore, or Parks and Rec wasn't on the table anymore, then yeah, the going into a university setting would probably be it.
There's still time, sir.
Hey, hey, there's nothing but time. You are right there. And if if I need to hop back in and work 20 plus years to make it to my 25-year retirement, then hey, I know I can get it there.
um, so overall, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but um, what kind of advice would you give folks, students or young professionals that are looking to follow kind of a similar career path, whether it be working for a parks department like you have most recently, or getting in the commercial sector? A lot of students don't think about the commercial sector as a career opportunity, to be honest. But what kind of advice would you give them as they think down those paths?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's don't be afraid to branch out. I mean, I think that's a mistake folks make, and it's something I learned from. One of the most impactful things I ever did in my career was I'd worked my 3 years in Clinton and then a year in College Station in athletics. Um, I moved over a lateral move from athletics to special events, but that ended up being one of the most impactful things I've ever done in my career because it opened me up to liability and insurance, for big events, logistics, um, water and power for any, special event ever in the history of time. First two questions by vendors and other folks is where's the water, where's the power? It opened me up to so much more, just diverse experience. So if you're a student right now, what I would say is, you may think you want to go in sports, but if you've got an opportunity to go work at a resort or to work in therapeutics or, in a state park or, MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, you know, give it a hard look and don't be afraid to try something, especially if you apply for a job, you get some interest, you get an interview, don't be afraid to do something outside the comfort zone because you just never know how it's going to benefit you. And especially as you're younger, don't be afraid to, go out of state somewhere, go out of the country because sure as heck when you get to my point, you're 10, plus years into a career, you've got a couple kids and a mortgage, traveling all over the world. It's just not too high on the priority list right now. Would love to do it, ain't happening. So yeah, just don't be afraid and look, everywhere. Um, Volunteer, especially if you go home for the summer, volunteer locally and just get experience. You can't replace actually doing the work, whether that's in a volunteer capacity of some sort or however you get that experience. Because whenever you go into an interview in a competitive interview environment, you need to be able to speak to something you've done outside of a textbook. And the only way to do it is to get outside and do it somehow, even if it's in a volunteer role.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sir, you have more than answered all my questions. Do you have anything else? Any
I
parting words
told
of
you I can
wisdom?
talk,
Well,
man.
I sincerely appreciate your time, man. As always, it was good to hear from you. I'm going to wrap this up and then